Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Nice looking Friday. You know, the first day of fall is today. It doesn't really start till about 2 minutes after 4, so you're still it's still summertime. It's still summertime. You can still go to the beach and wear your bikini.
Nice.
So I was an adolescent in the 60s, and I'm a male.
Yes.
And back in those years, you might remember there was a magazine called Playboy magazine. Mm-hmm. And if you were an adolescent male in the 1960s, this magazine was something, it was gold. You wanted to get your hand on this magazine. You wanted to see those pictures. I know. So
yes.
I remember being in shop class in one of the younger grades of probably junior high school, I think. And the shop teacher was a woodworking teacher. And he was a big, gruff guy, right? And he wore this big, thick apron, and he always wore these heavy-duty goggles to protect his eyes and these gloves to protect his hands, and he was the tough guy, right? Uh-huh. And he says to the guys in the class, myself included, what do you guys want to be when you grow up? Mm-hmm. And one of the boys said, I want to be a playboy. And we all giggled. And the teacher said, then you will be unhappy. And, and we all thought, why? That looks like a happy place to be. And he said, no, the happiest people are those that find a woman, love her, and have a good relationship, and just look around. Anybody you know that has had a happy life has probably had a good relationship.
Yes, for sure.
And you look around, you say, gosh, that man was right. I don't know what I learned about cutting wood, but I remember that. But I remember that one lesson. Jen Elmquist has written a book called Relationship Reset. I have read a little bit online from the book, and what I have read, I like. I think she probably would have loved that teacher. Jen is a relationship specialist, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and a master teacher, coach, and her book is called, again, Relationship Reset, Secrets from a Couples Therapist That Will Revolutionize Your Love for a Lifetime. Good morning, Jen. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Robin.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I am calling from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Nice.
All right. How's your relationship? Are you married?
My relationship's going strong today.
It's a little personal as a first question, isn't it? Yeah. Hopefully, were you able to hear my intro? I hope you could.
I love your story. And what an amazing thing to get dropped into your knowledge base as a teenager.
Well, it made me think, because up until that point, you look at this magazine, you look at these guys, the guys that were in like the ads in the magazine were like happy. They all had a drink and a pretty woman. And I didn't care about the drink, to be honest, but but it wasn't. It was what that magazine sold us was a lie. That was not the path to happiness. Having a new woman every month, a pad of the month or whatever they called it, was not the formula. You have the formula in your book.
I have a formula in my book that I think, after a decade of couples therapy with couples face-to-face in my office, is what I wish everyone knew before they came to see me.
Is the male half of the problems in the relationship, but just the male half for a second. Robin will ask about the female half. But is the male half because of our expectations that stem from that world of pornography? And I don't know, some people don't believe that Playboy is pornography, but you know what I mean. Does the message we got from the media as guys, did that ruin us as being loving men?
Ruin, I think, is a strong word. I think, there is objectification, and with objectification comes expectation. And I think we all come into our marriages with these great expectations of having fabulous sex, because the sex is a fabulous thing that gets us interested in each other to begin with.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, I think as time goes on and we realize, wow, this relationship is about so much more than sex. And some of the so much more is awesome, and some of the so much more is hard. I think that's where things start changing. And when our expectations are disappointed, we get disappointed.
And to bring to keep sex in the equation, I know that when people are members of churches and then you want to get married, you approach the pastor, you got to go through these marriage classes before he'll perform the ceremony. Sex really isn't addressed as much as everything else. Do you think that's a healthy thing?
I think sex is such a crux of a relationship. So if you think of a relationship as a brick wall, and all of the pieces of our relationship, everything from our communication to our finances to the families we come from to the children we raise, right? They're the bricks in the wall. I think sex is the mortar. It's the bonding agent. It is what keeps us connected. It's what keeps us intimate and wanting for the other person, that desire, which is why we get together in the first place.
I love that. Sex is the mortar.
And I think men would agree with that in a heartbeat. I don't know that we realize that women might agree with that, though. I think men say, really? Women agree with that?
Women absolutely agree with it. I think men and women are often turned on to sex in different ways, which is, we get lost in translation along the way. So life gets busy, and we end up, with a lot of priorities and a lot of responsibilities that distract us. And in that, we want to take care of those priorities and responsibilities, and sometimes sex gets last on the list. And I think men often can put sex first on the list, and they're fine going to the sex first, and where women, I think, sometimes need to go to sex after the day is done and all the priorities are checked off.
When a marriage is floundering and one of the partners want to get the divorce, and then the other partner doesn't want it, but then that partner says, well, let's go to counseling, and the other partner says, no, I don't want to spill my guts. I just want the divorce. How do you try to steer the couple into at least talking to each other, or is that like beyond help and they have to get this divorce?
Robin, what you were talking about is one of the core reasons I wrote this book to begin with. So there's a statistic out there that says couples wait up to 6 years after problems start to get help. And I knew that to be true because by the time those couples came to me, they looked very much like you just described. They were worn out, they were really stressed out, they were struggling, and oftentimes one person did feel defeated and done, and one person maybe at that point was the one that wasn't willing earlier, but now because there was this ultimatum was like, yeah, I'll work now. And then you get that too little too late syndrome going on. And so there is such a benefit to doing preventive medicine, so to speak, in your relationship earlier on, resolving problems sooner rather than later, getting over the stigma of getting help and getting help sooner rather than later.
Gosh.
The book again is called the Relationship Reset. It's written by Jen Elmquist. So do you is there a reset? Let's say it doesn't work out. Let's say there is no reset, or one person says, you know what, I don't care, it's not going to happen, see you later, and they're done. Now there's somebody left without anybody. Does that person enter into any new relationship more in a more guarded way, or or can you give that person advice?
I think we can look at endings as opportunities for new beginnings. So there are plenty of people out there that are in a position where their relationship has ended, and there is a question of what next, and do I feel like I could have something great when this didn't work out? And I think when you can look at your previous relationship as kind of part of your life curriculum, let's say, where, you got a lesson in that, and what did it teach you? What did it teach you about yourself? What did it teach you about what you want to find in a new partner? What would make a better relationship for you? And using that opportunity as a launching place into a better relationship, rather than something that's saying, well, I was so unhappy, but now I just need to find somebody else so then I don't feel lonely. That's going to be the wrong motivation. But that motivation of, I now understand myself better, and now I'm looking for a partner that understands me better too.
So people need to really, truly take stock and inventory in themselves and realize that there really isn't somebody else to blame but their own self?
Well, I don't know that it's blame. I think it's just we learn lessons through life, right? We grow and develop. And so there is a statistic out there that says that subsequent marriages have a higher divorce rate than a first marriage does. Well, I think that's because oftentimes we don't pause and say, okay, well, what did my first marriage teach me? We just move into the next marriage, because we want to feel comfortable. We don't want to feel alone. And then we start to perpetuate the same habits with a new person. So taking stock more in what did that teach me and how do I want to be a better partner and what kind of partner is better for me, those are the questions I think we need to ask the second time around.
Is there anything you learned from the couples that you worked with that surprised you and maybe even that you then passed on to other couples that worked?
It is that is a wonderful way of asking that question, because yes, and what I saw most often was that what people would come to me with, they'd come to me with problems, right? They'd say, Jen, I'm unhappy with this. Things are changing. I don't know how to change with this person, or we're fighting all the time, and I don't think we can do this differently. It's maddening to us. And I would say, that's great, because I've had 10 other people tell me the same thing today. So what you're telling me is normal. Yeah, it's normal. Every couple is going to go through that. And so the first section in my book, The Core Elements, talk about what's normal in every couple relationship that often couples see as problems, and then when they isolate them as problems, there's something wrong with their partner and it just derails the relationship, rather than seeing it as, oh my gosh, it doesn't matter who I'm with, I'm going to go through this, I better figure out how to do this well.
Right. Oh, I love that. When we have relationships with other people that we are not romantically involved with, we have an argument, and I guess sometimes we never see each other again. But I mean, sometimes if it's family, let's have an argument with your brother or something like that. You slam the door, you walk out the door, then later on say, I'm sorry. But how can we repair those relationships so much easier than we can somebody we're having sex with or romance with?
Right. Well, there's a permanency to those relationships. It's pretty hard to get rid of a brother, right?
Yeah,
you can actually get rid of you can get rid of a girlfriend, or you can get rid of a wife through divorce.
Yes.
But I think you have to start to look at the fact of what is the long play on this, right? If this relationship is an investment to me, if I actually see it as an asset, and I know that having this relationship 20, 30, 40 years is something that when I get to that place, I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I made it through. We know each other so well. There's so much comfort here. We've built so much life together. You start seeing that with a different kind of permanency. And so when you do have arguments, what you end up coming to a conclusion on is, well, let's just figure out how to get through this and recover with each other, rather than letting this argument be the end of our relationship.
I have a question. I wonder how dopey this is. This might be the dopiest question anybody's going to ask you today. do you think that food is part of it? I know this sounds dumb, but you know how we get hangry in the afternoon?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's lunchtime.
Is it better to go have a sandwich before you sit with your loved one and have a serious discussion?
Absolutely. I will advocate actually taking care of your physical needs before you have an emotional conversation all day long.
Oh my gosh.
I've witnessed some people, the men and women fall in love with each other, and then they get married and they seem to be okay for a few years, and then the woman starts trying to change the fellow. I mean, what happened to the guy that she fell in love with? How come she has this mothering thing to try to change him?
He got fat.
Oh. Because that could hurt relationships.
Too many sandwiches before they fought.
Right.
Well, it is true that when things aren't going the way we want them to, it's so much easier to blame it on somebody else. Mm-hmm. It's so much easier to look at the other person and say, if you would just change, then I would be happy. When the truth is, the easiest person to change is ourselves. And in couple relationships, this is actually the second section of my book, I call it mind benders. It's critical that you're actually able to modify your own inner thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, your expectations, and that both partners can do that together and come together and have conversations around, hey, this was my expectation. I thought it was going to work this way between us. It's not. So what's our solution to that? And for the other person to come and say, you know what, I hear what you're saying. Maybe I'm not even sure what that solution is, but I'm willing to search for it with you. I'm willing to be curious. I'm willing for the two of us to start to work together.
Really? Have you ever been in the room with a couple where that conversation took place?
I facilitate that conversation all day long.
Really?
And I think that is truly, and I think that ultimately, I talk in this book about becoming an expert in your relationship, or how to think like a couples therapist. And so often, to get to a couples therapy office, people are in crisis. It's very costly. It's really, it's inconvenient. But the information in that office is critical. So what I wanted people to have is the information from the office in a book, in an online learning, in a live event, so it's out there, it's accessible, so they can learn how to do those great conversations on their own.
The relationship that's in trouble, the person who wants to save the relationship will read the book. How do you get the other person to read the book? In going to a therapist, that's hard, but not impossible, I guess. And at least if you're both in the same room with you, the reluctant one will at least be hearing you, if not listening to you. But in reading a book, it's almost impossible to get somebody else to read the book. Can the book help the one person who is reading it to persuade the other person to start to make changes?
I believe it can, Larry. I'll tell you why I believe that. When writing this, what I knew is that what people needed was not just insight, an insight that's supported by research, but they actually needed actions. So there's lots of self-help books out there that tell us how we should think about things, or give us great insights, or might, help us have understanding. But if you can't take that insight and then put it into action in your life, it really is not very useful. So in this book, there's a lot of actions people can take. Even one person can take and start to use on their partner in their relationship.
But the action part has to stem from communication, and sometimes one partner doesn't want to talk to the other partner for fear they're going to say the wrong thing, get them mad, or they're going to, just have them, just go out somewhere and say, I'm not talking to you about this. How do you keep that communication flowing?
Yeah, when someone really doesn't want to talk about it.
About anything.
About anything. I think those are times in a relationship where, you're doing some soul searching. You're doing soul searching as a partner on, if this is the obstacle we keep coming up against, where do we go next? There are always deal breakers in relationships. And so that may be the next conversation with your partner is, I understand you may not want to talk about this, but it's getting to a place for me where this is feeling like a deal breaker. We really need to talk about it, or get some support, or do something different, or we're really going to find ourselves in a hard spot.
Do you know what I find is really sweet? We live in an interesting place here in Florida, because we have the University of Florida, and we have the tourists, of course, and we also have a lot of retirees. So it's kind of like you can see the beginning of love with the college kids, and you can see the young families with a lot of the tourists are young families with little kids that come into Disney World. And then you see these older folks walking, and holding hands and kissing. It's just an amazing thing to watch. And you would like to think that the older ones were together ever since they were the younger ones, but not necessarily. Maybe they crossed tracks somewhere along the way. I just put your picture on there. I have a question about pretty, because you are really pretty. Okay. So is pretty important?
Thank you, Larry.
Is pretty important? In other words, and this might be a man thing. I don't know. Why is pretty so important to us as men? Or is it important to you ladies also? Do I have to clean up a little bit?
Well, attractiveness definitely is a core piece of the beginning of a relationship, and I do think people need to pay attention to it, right? We don't want to let that totally slide. You want to continue to present yourself as a good, healthy version of yourself to your partner long term.
You have one section of your book that you call the muscle builders. I found that intriguing.
Really?
Yeah, muscle builders are ultimately the key. And you've asked a variety of questions about what with one partner doesn't want to be involved. But I think oftentimes in couple relationships, people do want to be involved with each other. They just often don't know what to do. We get to the place where maybe we just get kind of bored, or things get stale, or we need to know, what are those great conversations, those prompts, those things that actually bring us closer. So the muscle builders are all research-based exercises and actions that couples can take together in their relationship that do increase their bond.
Have you found similarities between different cultures when you're counseling couples?
Well, yeah, culture plays a huge role in people's expectations in relationship. And, I think we have cultural expectations that affect commitment. We have cultural expectations that affect roles, the roles we play in relationships. We have cultural expectations about how much our family of origin is actually involved in the marriage, how much say mom and dad actually get in the relationship. So culture plays a huge role, actually, in relationships.
Yeah. Have you ever dealt with somebody that was arranged marriage, like an Indian couple where the parents set them up before they were even born?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have those in our community.
No?
Yeah, I have not actually worked with that couple. However, I know research says there's a lot of success in that marriage. So maybe we should pay attention to it.
That's interesting. Yeah. The book is called Relationship Reset. On the video that we're streaming, I put the covers. There's a blue one and a white one. Are they different? Or is it the same book?
One's same book. Blue is the hardcover, white is the paperback. It's your preference on what you like.
Okay.
Since you are the therapist and you and your husband do these reset life events for couples, how do you each get along with each other? Do you kind of know when to let him go and you back off and vice versa?
Well, Robin, it sounds to me like you understand a long-term relationship, if you know that's how it works. 'Cause I think that's definitely a big part of it. You start to understand each other well enough over the years that you know how to give each other space to just be who they are and hopefully be a better version of themselves. And my husband and I used a lot of the tools in the book, and I write our story. Our story's in the conclusion of the book. I did feel like there's a piece of this that's important because it's my expertise and it's my career, but there's also a piece of this that's personal. Speaking to other couples and saying, hey, we've been where you are. We get it. We know that some seasons are better than others in a relationship.
I love you. You're wonderful.
The book is called Relationship Reset. It's written by our guest, Jen Elmquist, and I found it on Amazon. It's getting really good reviews. Do you have a website of your own?
I do. Best place to find me and find info on the book is relationshipresetbook.com.
Okay, just use the word book and you'll have it. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Relationship Reset Book. Yeah.
Thank you for being on the show. For the listeners, if any of you get the book and it saves your marriage, call us. Let us know.
Yeah,
it probably won't be overnight. I mean, how long does it normally take from what is the time frame for a road that's a relationship that's a rocky road to being back on track again? Is it a year?
That is $1 million question, Larry. I think it's very unique to each couple based on what it is they need to work through, where they are in their relationship, and where it is they want to go long term with each other.
And they both have to want it, right? They both have to want to get to that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is I would say that is the magic bullet. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you both have to want it and know how to do it. But if you can look at each other and say, you know what, this relationship matters. It matters not just to us, it matters to our kids, it matters to the generations that come after us. How can we be a couple that can work together and build that legacy that other people will say, they were able to do it, we can do it too.
Very good. Jen, thank you for being on the air with us today. We should have interjected some of the modern stuff like Facebook. How does that affect everything?
Oh, yeah, social media.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes that might get people jealous, too.
Yeah.
Especially when old girlfriends write to you.
Exactly.
I won't stop writing to you. Jen, thank you, Jen. Thank you for being on the show with us.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Robin.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. A mix of sun and clouds on this Friday with a shower or thunderstorm in spots this afternoon, high 84 to 88. Partly cloudy Friday night with a shower or thunderstorm, low 72 to 76. Times of sun and clouds and rather breezy Saturday with a shower and thunderstorm or two, high 84 to 88. And on Sunday, clouds and some sun with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, high 85 to 89. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Here is your 30-second news brief. FEMA will be at the Marion County Public Library headquarters tomorrow to assist residents that suffer damage from Hurricane Irma. A 40-year-old Ocala man is facing molestation charges after a 15-year-old girl said he performed lewd acts on her in Lake County. The Ocala Regional Medical Center employee attacked last year while treating a bank robbery suspect is